healthy, mature relationship. Because men and teenage boys are told to repress. And if they can't, they blame it on the woman. These men, in my opinion, based of being in therapy for 2 years, I think a lot of these men are so emotionally and sexually crippled, they can't even spend time with a woman doing business or having friendship without fearing an affair or something inappropriate is going on. It's like the How Harry Met Sally thing, where men and women can't be friends. This is the dogma, the doctrine of Southern Baptist churches. Men can't be friends with women because women are nothing but temptation. And women shouldn't want to be friends with men unless she's trying to lure him into something bad. They have such a lurid view of men and dehumanizing view of women. Women aren't allowed or even acknowledged to have autonomy and sovereignty over their body. Women are not allowed to have a fully functioning sexuality, know how to use it, get what they want, and enjoy life the same way a man would without being called certain sexist slurs that usually are 4-letter words long. And it's like they don't develop some part of their frontal lobe where they can't even talk about sex without acting like a child. I don't know how young boys read these books and have any clue what a healthy, non-toxic view of male sexuality is. Some of the most emotionally healthy, mature people have low sex drives, average sex drives, no sex drive, or intermittingly a sex drive, where they take a long period of time and do nothing, and then all of a sudden they do it, and then it's kind of like a dormant sexuality, where it appears when they want to. I think that's a part of a small group of asexual people, where it's sporadic, where they go long periods of time, they're celibate, and then all of a sudden they want to do it, and then they have a long period of time where they don't, and that's perfectly fine. You won't ever see it in a Southern Baptist book. Focus on the family books. They honestly only see women as wife material, or they see them as a hooker material. And that's not me saying it. That's the way they put it in their book. And men are not obsessed with sex. If a man is obsessed with sex, it's usually because they have an internal validation problem. They use sex to validate their low self-esteem. That's why sex addiction and gambling aren't medically recognized disorders. Unless it goes so overboard, you're a danger to yourself and other people. When churches and books only applaud and acknowledge the existence of the most toxic part of masculinity and are silent on every other type of masculinity, denying it, erasing it, making fun of it, calling for it to be killed off, which is terrible, or expelling it, you are creating the next generation of people, and the generation after that, of men growing up feeling, I don't fit this analogy, so I'm broken. Or I do fit this analogy and it's normal. It's not. Or I sometimes feel like I fit this role model, but I really don't. But sometimes, when you allow people to read something and think that something toxic is healthy, that something that is normal, not common, because asexuality is only 1% to 2%. It's not uncommon. It's uncommon, but it's very normal as something that is a mental illness. Or I don't fit that role. There's something wrong with me, or I want it more than what the role says I should, so there must be something wrong with me. I mean, there's so many different types of people that grew up with this. How much trauma has these books caused men? How many predators have read these books and thought, the way men think about themselves, the way men think about women, and the way the church and these books teach women to think about themselves and men, I have some prime ground to work with, because what they're teaching makes this environment so ripe for me to prey on people. It's like a buffet, because these books set up a situation where men can easily abuse women. Women think abuse is normal, and they think that things that are abnormal are normal, and things that really are normal, not everyone feels that way, but it's normal, they feel it's abnormal. How many people have lived their life the way the church and these books told them to, and they were miserable because that's not who they are? And it's so damaging for people who they're not a rectangle fitting in a rectangle role. There's something else. You create an environment where men can't measure up. Or if they do, it's something that's going to be terribly toxic. And they're creating everyone who interacts with them to seeing toxic as normal, and that there's no such thing as a spectrum. And just because the majority of people fit into a box doesn't mean that box is healthy. It doesn't mean it's unhealthy. And it doesn't mean that this is what everyone is like. Sexuality is like ice cream. Yeah, the majority of people on the planet like vanilla, but not everyone. Some people like it in a bowl, some like it in a cone, some like it in a milkshake. The problem is, when you grow up in an environment that's kind of like an ice cream store, where you can only choose vanilla, and you have to choose a very specific type of vanilla. You can't be anything else. And if you eat it out of anything but a cone, it's a taboo. And yeah, the ice cream analogy may seem silly, but it's pretty accurate. I will never believe that these people who write these books, these doctors, people with PhDs, theological and psychological experts, don't know that this isn't right. There is no way. You cannot get a PhD in psychology and still believe that this is the only thing out there. There's a difference between believing and knowing. You can't get a PhD in psychology and go to various high-profile seminaries without being exposed to different types of sexuality, different opinions, because these books don't even align with the most brilliant, educated, medically backed, factual books out there. They are in direct opposition with books that have stood the test of time due to having factual evidence. These books are so contrary to medical experts, scientific reasoning, scientific experiments, thousands of data that has been accumulated by tests and experiments. You can't have a PhD without being exposed to different points of view and what is correct in the medical field. I mean, they can still believe whatever they want, but you can't get a degree without being exposed to things that aren't Christian. Because you have to take certain classes. You can't take psych without understanding the basics and beyond that of how the human psyche works. People who become sex therapists, they have to be specially credentialed. They're specialists. You have to go through so many hoops, so many educational classes, and so many boxes you have to check. There is no way these people become experts with multiple licenses and don't know that this is not how male sexuality works. It's impossible. They can believe something vastly different if they want, but you cannot get a degree in psychology and think that all men are raving sex addicts. Because that's how these books portray people. They basically portray men as always thinking about sex, always wanting it, and women barely want it or don't want it at all, and they endure it so they have a good home. This is damaging, traumatic, and abusive dynamics. If you teach men and women that men can't control themselves, that men always want it and never not want it, you're creating a scenario where men have liberty to assault women without accountability. Women will justify men assaulting them because that's how they've been told relationships and sex dynamics work. And if a man is assaulted, he's been taught his whole life, men always want it, so he can't have been assaulted, even though that's utter hogwash. These books perpetuate the patriarchy, grape culture, purity culture, the worst, most vile forms of misogyny and red pill material I have ever seen. The way they talk about little girls in these books as being the property of men is disgusting. The way they treat women and view women as nothing more than a jogger that a man sees and can't control himself is utterly disgusting. And there are a lot of men who don't get degrees in psychology, anatomy, and gynecology. They may never know that these viewpoints, these books, are such a sham of what real positive green flag sexuality looks like. Because green sexuality is consensual. It views people as sovereign, autonomous. They see women as just another person, not a sexual temptress, a whore, or someone's daughter. They see them as somebody that is just a person that isn't owned. They're not associated with someone else, which is why they deserve respect. They respect them because they're a human being. They see women as having agency and desire, which is less, the same, or more, or not at all. And there's no hierarchy of what's normal, right, and everyday, as long as it's consensual and everyone has enthusiastic consent and knowledge about it.